Welcome, welcome one and all to Anatomy and Physiology. It's going to be the very best times ever. So, obviously the Anatomy and Physiology is talking about the human body, it's how it works, what it looks like, that type of stuff. But it's probably wise to talk about exactly what anatomy means and what physiology means, right? I mean, when I first took anatomy and physiology, it didn't really make sense to me. I just said, oh, woo, body, yeah. What's physiology? I don't know. Anyways, so anatomy is more of like the structural look, and physiology is more of how it works, things you can't really see without like tweezing things apart. It's its functionality, or how it works. So if you look at the branches of anatomy, you got embryology, you're looking at what the embryo looks like, cell biology, what is the cellular structure, histology, what's going on in the tissues, things like that. Well, physiology, you got how do these molecules work together? How does neurology work? How on earth does this chemical work? How does the heart work? Etc., etc. Another way to look at it is, here's a brain. This is anatomy. Look at its structure. There's some wrinkles in it. There's some folds in it. There's some cups and curves to it. There's neuroanatomy. Yay! While over here, if you take a look at the same brain and you look at how it's working and operating, you can see the electricity running through it versus you got the vegetative state, which means like a dead brain, you're not seeing anything move, versus a normal. You can see that there's a lot of electricity going on in here. So that would be like physiology, looking at how the brain is actually working, while the anatomy would more looking at, well, what does it look like? So they do want us to cover a little bit about the structural organization of the system and bodies, and they start off with this weird little picture with, I guess that's Mark Nielsen down here at the bottom at number 6 with the organismal level. But they want you to look at it sort of like with what's like the inspirational thing, where it starts off with this an itty bitty atom and then goes up higher and higher and higher in organization until you get out to the universe and all that stuff. Anyways, so there's this chemical, starting off with chemicals. Everyone's hopefully taken some type of chemistry or physics in which there's little atoms. Everything you can't trust an atom, they really do make up everything. But that's an old joke, I'm sorry, forgive me, don't leave me. Anyways, atoms are there to really build things up. And if you were to put atoms and molecules together and incorporate them all together, you got the fats and you got water and all DNA and all that stuff all going into and forming this cell. The cell that it could be like a bacterial cell, it could be a human cell, it could be part of a cell inside an organ somewhere. It could be a neuron. It could be something. Well, the cell has a very specific function. Now, you could take away or put them together, a bunch of cells together, and then you build a tissue. Tissues usually has like one function. So a muscle tissue, it's going to contract and it's going to pull things, push things. If it's in the heart, it's pushing blood out. It's contracting so it can push blood out into the system. If it's your skin, it's there to protect, and it's not going to all of a sudden, the skin isn't going to all of a sudden evolve into muscle and be muscle. No, a tissue is a tissue. You can combine tissues together and form an organ. So like your stomach here, you can see there's muscle on it. You can see there's a cell lining in it. You can see some more cell lining in it with cells that do different things, like pump out hydrochloric acid, push out mucus to protect the tissue from the hydrochloric acid, and there's a lot of other things that it releases. And then, the stomach does great at dissolving things, but it doesn't really do a good job absorbing things. So you need to put more organs to connect it and make it work. So it becomes a system when you put multiple organs together. So the stomach is a part of the digestive system, which has the small intestine, large intestine, all of which help with absorbing and getting rid of some stuff that you don't really want in your body and defecating it out. And if you obviously the digestive system, it's great that we have it, but if it were just by itself, it really wouldn't do much, right? You kind of need the reason to have energy being absorbed and breaking things down, you got to have an organism moving it around. So in this case, it's a human. It's, again, I don't know if it's like maybe that's Mark Nielsen, maybe, who knows. It's probably the guy that made the chart. But anyways, who cares? I shouldn't say who cares. Organismal level. An organism is a bunch of systems put together. A system is a bunch of organs put together. An organ is a bunch of tissues put together. A tissue is a bunch of cells being put together. And a bunch of cells is a bunch of atoms and molecules put together. Now, you do need to know, and we will definitely go over every single one of these systems in our discussion here in Anatomy and Physiology. I put it in order here what systems we're going to run into first. Then we're going to talk about integumentary, skeletal, muscular, then nervous, then endocrine, cardiovascular, lymphatic, immune, respiratory, digestive, urinary, and reproductive. I would, at this point, you don't need to know like the different types of cells of every single type of tissue and every single organ inside those systems right now. You just need to know like a general function. This comes from our book, Table 1.2, and it'll tell you pretty much very general basic functionalities. So for the skin, you would want to remember that it has protection, heat regulation, making vitamin D, storing fat. The skeletal system, you got the support that you need that helps like anchor your muscles so it has some type of movement. Without the skeletal system, your muscles are just squirming around. In fact, like your digestive system is made a bunch of muscle and it sort of squirms around on the inside a little bit. So you'd have just a throbbing mass of muscle. So skeletal system is pretty good. It's a storage of calcium, which is really important for your heart. You don't have calcium, you got no. Muscles, I'm going to take a guess you already know muscles, what it does. It helps you move stuff, whether it be the outside muscles called skeletal muscles. Wonder why it's called skeletal. Skeletal. Anyways, you'll get more about that later. You got smooth muscle, which we'll talk about later. That's like the stuff in your digestive tract and in your veins and arteries. And then you got cardiac muscle, which you could probably take a stab in the dark and tell me, hey, it's the heart muscle. Nervous tissue. Boy, do I get nervous when I talk about nervous tissue. But that was terrible. Please forgive me. That's this strike 2. Just give me one more strike. Anyways, so you got the nervous tissue, which has a lot of, hey, I just stepped on a nail. Hey, it's really cold outside. Or hey, this cat is really soft and fluffy. So that sensor information goes up to a center, whether it be part of the spinal cord, doing a reflex, or up to your brain to process what you're going to do. It goes, yep, sounds good. And then it sends back down information down into your nerves and says, this is how you're going to respond. Endocrine system is a lot slower. It's releasing chemicals out into the blood, but it sure does last a lot longer. And it has a lot of different targets when you compare it to the nervous system. Cardiovascular system, that's actually moving the blood and getting nutrients and waste products to their proper locations. You got the lymphatic system, which is actually often paired together with the immunity, because a lot of that lymphatic stuff has a lot to do with protecting your body. The respiratory system, that's breathing. You got to get oxygen in your body to make things work and get rid of CO2 because, well, CO2 is not your friend. Digestive system, you got to get energy from somewhere. How are you going to get that sugar in your body? How are you going to get rid of fatty wastes? Well, through the liver and the gallbladder. We'll talk about that more later. FYI. Urinary system, getting rid of liquid wastes and making certain that you don't have too much water, too little water, holding on to all those salts that are important like sodium, potassium, chlorine, among some of them. Then you have the reproductive system. That's the part where we learn how to make new individuals. with that, that is the basics of A&P. I'm actually going to go ahead and include here the characteristics of the living human organism, or any type of living organism. We talked about anatomy and physiology. How do we know that something is living? Well, a lot of different reasons. It's got to have a metabolism. You got to be able to process things and make it a part of you, or build things up and take things down. So yeah, you kind of see the movement thing going on, but with trees, they don't really seem to grow much or move much, but they really do have a really good metabolism. That's how they grow. Anyways, there has to be growth. There has to be differentiation. What does it do? How does it act? And it has to reproduce. And a major thing, I already mentioned it, homeostasis. It's that finding that balance. You don't want too much salt. You don't want too little salt. You don't want too much heat. You don't want too little heat. You want everything to be just right so everything functions properly. If you don't, you're going to get some uh-ohs. And really, a really good example of that is your body fluids. If you drink a lot of water, well, you don't really want that much water, so you're going to urinate a lot more water, and your urine's going to be nice and clear. If you don't like drinking water, well, your urine's going to be dark yellow. That's good. Your body can do its very best to try and hold on to all the water that it can. With that, I'm pretty certain this is a good point to stop. I'm going to make this next one another video, and I hope everything is well with you.